Welcome back, everyone. It's Friday, February 11th, 2022. Dominic, we're only 3 days away from Valentine's Day.
How about that?
Aww.
Aww.
So, Dominic, any big plans for the upcoming holiday?
Not on the day of, but I guess I technically do kinda sorta have a Valentine this year for the first time in quite some time, Noah. But I'll be venturing up into the state of Ohio, and I'm going to be seeing a friend. They shall remain nameless as of right now, but I'll be watching fights. So that's in the plans regardless. I told you guys last week we had my sister's birthday. I said, I'm sitting my ass on the couch and the fights are going to be on. Same thing's coming into play here on Saturday night. I've already said, hey, we'll do whatever on Friday. We'll do whatever Saturday afternoon, but Saturday evening, my ass is sitting there for 6-7 hours and we're watching the fight. So I'm excited. It should be a very fun weekend nonetheless. Noah, you doing anything fun for Valentine's Day? Shooting Cupid's arrow at anyone?
I'm making love to myself, homie. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not even doing that.
That's Cupid's arrow.
I'm going home to visit my mommy. Okay?
Well, that's your Valentine.
My mommy is my Valentine this year. Because the Bengals are going to win us a fucking Super Bowl.
That's crazy. It is Super Bowl Sunday this weekend, too. What a weekend.
I got a jar of moonshine, apple pie moonshine, that will be shoeyed before the Super Bowl. Could you imagine? But no plans as far as like Valentine's Days regardless. Ugh.
I mean, hopefully you're having a happy hangover on Valentine's Day.
Yeah, exactly.
And not a bad one.
Exactly. But Dominic, I'm happy to hear that you found yourself a Valentine. If you guys are interested in seeing Dominic's Valentine, you just go add his mom on Facebook. and to Dominic and his Valentine, all I gotta say is the more things change, the more they stay the same. Anyways, let's get into our fight announcements.
Here we go.
Let's start with Bellator, Dom. I'm going to mix it up a little bit.
That's right. How about it?
May 13th, that's the Bellator London card, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
And not only did this fight get announced, but Bellator threw a little shade at the UFC. I don't know if you saw the
Oh, I didn't. I'm curious.
I don't know if it was a press release or however this fight came about. It was released as additions to the best MMA card in London this year.
Oh, come on, guys. Let's chill out a little bit here.
It's the co-main event. Douglas Lima is back, and he's going up against the guy right below him in the rankings, Jason Jackson. Of course, the headliner, Amasov versus MVP.
Yep.
So, yes, you do have a title fight in London. Big deal there. But, Dominic, as far as this co-main event, I feel like it's a really solid co-main for Bellator. But the story here has got to be, is Douglas Lima going to continue that kind of downward trajectory? And then really, on vice versa, I mean, Jason Jackson's looked really good. But he's kind of doing it all under the radar because his fighting style has not really lended itself to necessarily highlight reels like an MVP. But he's been more consistent. So do you see the makings here for perhaps maybe a guy to kind of break through the glass ceiling and show everybody, hey, I'm a star, I'm next? Or is this just going to be affirmation that there's still a level between a guy like Lima and the rest of the competition?
I mean, man, based off of what we've seen from Lima lately, and especially losing the title and losing his shot when he went up in a weight class. Granted, those are two ultra tough guys, obviously, but Jason Jackson's got to be thinking, this is my time. This is my chance to not only beat the biggest name on my resume, but to get into title contention. I think there could be an upset here, and like you said, the biggest storyline is, what are we going to see from Douglas Lima? Can he bounce back? Can he get back into the win column, or has he kind of just had his shine? Is it kind of his time to pass that torch? That's what I'm most curious about here in this co-main event.
I agree. And also just shout out to Douglas Lima's brother, Diego. He retired from MMA today.
Did he really? I didn't know that.
Yep, Diego Lima retired. Today is in Wednesday, February 9th. So shout out to the Lima brothers. But yeah, it's again, Jason Jackson has the personality. He's from Jamaica. You know, that's an interesting market that you don't see a lot for these high profile fighters. But the fight style just hasn't really, at least yet. He has good wins. I mean, he's beat Benson Henderson. Oh God, of course I named one name, but I forgot who his last win was against. But regardless, it's just he goes to the judges' scorecards a lot. He kind of does what he has to do to win, but he's in the driver's seat. He's ranked third with the win, no matter if he does it the way he's done it every time before, or if he gets a big finish and all of a sudden everybody kind of goes, whoa, Jason Jackson. I think just winning this fight is probably enough for him to get a title shot next, just because he's in his prime, 31 years old, now or never kind of for him. It just feels like now while he's fighting at his best, you know.
Right, I agree.
Also, back to the UFC, June 4th, Dan Ige going up against Mosvar Evloev. Dominic, I gotta just to say, I think this is a brutally tough fight for Dan Ige. Yeah. As tough as he is, as good as he can be, Mosvar Evloev is a problem for this featherweight division. And for a guy like Ige, who's coming off back-to-back losses, kind of in need of a bounce-back win, going up against Evloev, who's so sharp, just constantly, takes his opponents down and does a really good job of keeping them there, ground and pounding them. Ige kind of shows some susceptibility to getting taken down previously. I think it's going to be a tough night for him, but what do you think? Do you think that this is perhaps focus more on the Evloev side? What kind of opportunity is this for him?
Yeah, I mean, well, if you're Evloev, you got to be thinking, well, I kind of lucked out here because, he was pulled from that fight against Ilya Topuria, who was in that back half of the rankings, and that was a fight we were super excited for. But now, instead he gets a top 10 matchup against a big-name guy in Dan Ige. This is his time to shine here and really catapult in. And truthfully, the stylistic matchup, it's a little bit better for Evloev as well.
It's a little more favorable.
I mean, everything is kind of lining up here on the positive side for him. Now, I'm not saying by any means he's just going to steamroll through Ige. Ige has that equalizing power, and he is very well-rounded. But overall, this is a very hard fight for Ige, one that could really delay any sort of potential momentum that he wants to kind of get back into those contender talks. And for Evloev, his chance to become a contender. So it was a fight that came by surprise, happening in June, so it's still a ways away. But, I mean, I do like it, especially for the undefeated Evloev.
That's going to wrap it up for the fight announcements. And we do have one little small news story. This probably wouldn't have gotten its own headline most episodes, but there's no other news. So
that's right.
Let's talk about the Manning brothers.
This is exciting.
The Manning brothers.
That's right. What? Yes.
For those of you that didn't follow the NFL this year, every Monday they had something called the Manningcast, where Peyton and Eli would essentially kind of, in a more laid-back environment, broadcast the games. They would have guests on, some in the NFL, some working for the NFL, some just outside celebrities. And, I never actually watched the Manningcast, but all reviews told me that everybody really liked it.
No, I loved it. It was great.
Yeah. So, or I shouldn't say I never listened to me. I never really focused on it, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
But the deal is, Dominic, that everybody liked it so much that Peyton and Eli signed a deal for an extended role with Disney, offering alternative broadcast to other events, specifically naming UFC events in here.
Yeah.
So are you on board with this? Because, I think this is interesting. We are obviously big sports guys. We enjoy other sports outside of MMA. But something I always kind of forget or fail to realize is I might believe that the majority of hardcore MMA fans aren't really also sports fans. A big portion of MMA fans tend to just watch MMA.
At least definitely primarily for sure.
Yeah, I mean I see a lot where people are like, no, I don't give a shit about football or basketball or baseball.
Yeah.
So, is this announcement a big deal for the UFC? And is this something that you would actually be interested in listening to, watching?
I mean, it's not like the craziest thing ever, but I think it's really cool. I mean, I love Peyton Manning's my favorite quarterback ever. Him and Eli are so smart in terms of like talking football. So obviously, they're not going to be able to bring that same insight to the UFC. But I think they're two really funny guys. Their personalities, they would have maybe some fighters or other celebrities that watch the UFC on there with them. And at the end of the day, it's just kind of an extra piece of entertainment that you could watch on the side or something. So again, it's not something that I think the UFC is like benefiting hugely from, but there is that potential to have a couple football people that come over just because they like Peyton and Eli, and maybe you grab a fan or two. So I think it's really cool. I'll be curious to see kind of how they go about implementing it, because obviously when they do football, they have the main broadcast on ESPN, then they do them on ESPN2. So maybe they'll only do it for like when there's an ESPN card, including March 26th in Columbus, Ohio. But we'll see what happens. But yeah, I'm excited. I think it's really cool just to continue expanding in any way to bring eyes to MMA and the UFC.
Yeah, I mean it doesn't really bother me, but it can't get worse than the Snoopcast, right? That the
You're
Contender
right
Series
on the
had.
Contender Series.
That's my biggest fear is that this is going to be worse than the Snoopcast. I hate the Snoopcast. I don't know how everybody feels about it, but
Him with like Uriah Faber.
yeah, and like look, I appreciate the effort, and I like that a guy like Snoop Dogg, great personality, big celebrity. I like that he likes MMA and he wanted to do that.
Yeah.
And I'm not against, Dana kind of, uh, what would you call it? I'm not against him trying new things, trying something like that, seeing how it works. It was just terrible. It's just God's honest truth.
Yeah.
I realized after hearing Snoop Dogg on there, and then I heard him commentating, I think one of the Triller Jake Paul cards. I think it was the Roy Jones Mike Tyson card. I just realized I don't ever need to hear Snoop commentate fights ever again. Never again.
Fair enough.
But let's get into UFC 271. That is pretty much the meat and potatoes of this episode, Dominic. A lot of good fights. Even though, like, I think a lot of people might be, again, kind of second guessing themselves, thinking this card's not as stacked as others because there's only one title fight. But 15 fights, that's a lot. I think it's tied for a record.
Yeah, that's a lot of fights.
But let's start with the main event. I said it on the Nosebleeds. Go check that out. Our betting show. That's YouTube only. 3 or 2.5 years in the making. This felt like a rematch that probably should have happened a little bit sooner.
Yep.
But here we are. First quarter 2022. Israel Adesanya this time as the champion. Robert Whittaker as the challenger, Dominic. I want you to kind of paint the picture for the audience and for anybody listening that maybe wasn't watching at the time or wasn't really following or doesn't remember. You start at the end point of fight one and talk about where these two guys have gone since. Where have they gotten better? Where have they gotten worse or stayed stagnant or whatever? What has changed from fight number one?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking Israel Adesanya going into that fight on this meteoric rise, was coming off of that fight of the year contender against Kelvin Gastelum to get the interim belt, one of the best fights of all time. And he goes in front of, the biggest crowd in UFC history, over 57,000 people in Marvel Stadium, and just demolishes Robert Whittaker, knocks him out early on in the second round, almost finished him in the first round. He looked perfect, as perfect as you can be inside the UFC octagon. And, we've seen a lot of both guys in the aftermath, but Whittaker took some time away for his mental health, like a year off, I believe. But now he's rallied off 3 straight wins, all against top level guys: Jared Cannonier, Kelvin Gastelum, and Darren Till. And they've all been decision wins where we've seen him go 3 rounds, we've seen him go 5 rounds. We've seen a lot of Robert Whittaker in the cage, and the same goes for Israel Adesanya. He had that snooze fest in his first title defense against Yoel Romero. But then he goes on to defeat Paulo Costa, made it look easy. It was absolutely flawless in that fight, looked spectacular. He challenges Jan Blachowicz up at 205 pounds to try and become a double champ. He doesn't come out with the win there. He kind of gets not dominated, but it was a pretty convincing win for Jan Blachowicz. The size just really, played a big factor there in that one. But he drops back down to 185, and he looks amazing again for 5 rounds against Marvin Vettori, the second time that he beats him. So here we are today. It's been quite a while since we've seen Izzy. At least it feels that way because he has been such an active champion and such a just active fighter. This guy, Noah, has not even been in the UFC 4 years. Actually, this month will mark his 4-year anniversary inside the UFC, and he's 10-1 and a championship belt and 3 title defenses. So, again, it goes back to that rise we saw of him. It's really one of the biggest ones we've ever seen, and here we are. You said it's, the rematch 2.5 years in the making. Yes, it could have happened sooner, but it still feels very right to happen right now. These are the 2 clear-cut top fighters in the 185-pound middleweight division, and I'm very excited for this. I've had a very good feeling about this. I'll kind of wait till we get into the X's and O's about how it will play out, but I'm very excited for this. It's elite level guys in their prime, and you can't ask for nothing better than that when it comes to a title fight.
Yeah, based off of your observations there, your recap of kind of where we started and where we are at now, a lot of positive takeaways, basically. These guys have both looked, for the most part, fantastic, and I actually appreciate that. I think we're both on the same page as far as the light heavyweight fight. Like, yes, disappointing for Adesanya not to get that champ status, and you can look at that as a very clear sign of maybe what is to come if he does try to go back up to light heavyweight. But in terms of his middleweight title run, I don't think there's much to take away from that fight. I really don't. I mean, Blachowicz won the way he needed to.
Yeah.
Did it by being the bigger guy. Had good takedowns. Izzy didn't even weigh 205 pounds. It was a misguided decision, I guess.
Yeah.
But regardless, at middleweight, he's looked near perfect. And Robert Whittaker, to his credit, being that he got kind of, I'm not going to say embarrassed, but he got styled on in the first fight. He went back to the drawing board, made a lot of improvements, and looks like I don't, we threw that 2.0 around with him, and he was already so good to begin with.
I know, man.
I don't know if I could really say he's like a new fighter or something. I mean, he was already very good, very well-rounded. But I think, coming off that loss, that really what lost him that fight more than anything was the IQ part. I mean, he lost that fight before he stepped in.
Yeah.
I think his 3 wins since have showed a much smarter fighter.
He's more polished.
Yes. I mean, he just seems more sure of himself, more confident in his ability, and especially in his ability to go 3 rounds, to go 5 rounds. When he doesn't, Cannonier, when Cannonier in round 3 starts landing some good shots and wobbles him, he doesn't panic.
Yep.
He looks to grapple him, take him down, and try to hold him down for the rest of the round, and did so. I mean, he got wobbled bad. If that was the Yoel Romero fight where you saw him get wobbled and dropped and nearly finished, and, he was looking to fire back, while being on droopy legs. So he does seem to be a much smarter fighter now. The question, though, is, I guess, that I have, is does it really matter? Because, again, Israel Adesanya, while being a pure specialist, I mean, one of the best displays of striking you'll ever see in the UFC. Not, what you can clearly say, Robert Whittaker, more well-rounded, more weapons, but none of them are as elite as what Adesanya offers. And Adesanya is an elite defensive fighter as well. You call it the Izzy effect a lot of times. He, no matter where his opponent is, in proximity to him, he always has the perfect defense for their shot and the follow-up to hurt them bad. Because he's a really good counter-puncher and doesn't get hit a lot. I mean, yes, the Calvin Gastelum fight was a thing, but Yoel Romero, as bad a fight as that was, didn't get hit much. Paulo Costa, did Paulo ever hit him with anything?
Yeah, no shit.
Really, the first Robert Whittaker fight didn't get hit with much. Marvin Vettori got taken down a couple times, but then flipped the position.
Yeah, no one saw that coming.
I would argue Izzy is a better fighter today than he was when he won the belt.
100%. Yes.
So because of that, is Whittaker improved more than Izzy has improved? Because he's going to have to make up for that, whether or not that was one of the worst versions of Robert Whittaker in that title loss. But I wouldn't say it was the best version of Adesanya either. So either way, I think we can agree Adesanya was a better fighter at that time. But if Robert Whittaker wants to have a real shot here, not just a 1 in a million, but like a real shot to say that he's the best middleweight in the world, he will have had to make up a lot of ground.
Yeah.
And I'm just not so sure that that's very doable. And that sucks. I mean, it does because of how good he really is. But I think, I said it on the nosebleeds, Dominic, my worry here is that, and I'm not the first one to throw this out, so I'm not going to pretend and take credit for it, but Robert Whittaker to Adesanya feels a lot like Rich Franklin to Anderson Silva.
Yeah, and that makes sense. That's a good comparison. It's weird because these two guys are, again, they're the top two guys in the division, and it's clear. But when they fight, they lead the dance. Whoever their opponent is following their lead. They're poking in and out. They're moving quick. Especially Rob, the way that he moves has always been very unique. You ask a great question. How can Robert win this fight if they both have improved so much? And Israel Adesanya was already the better fighter. That means he's still the better fighter, coming into this one technically on paper. So it's very fascinating matchup. And you have to take into account too, Adesanya, he's going to be 4 inches taller. He's got a 6.5-inch reach advantage. That's a lot when you're going for a title fight, man, especially against a striker as dangerous and as precise as Adesanya. So can Whittaker use his quick blitzes, that quick 1-2 into the head kick that he uses so good? Can he even land that against a guy that's so much taller than him and Adesanya? There's so many question marks in terms of just how the fight will play out. And I talked about this on the nosebleeds. I've talked about it time and time again, and I have to bring it up here. I can't help but just get this gut feeling that we're going to see a tit-for-tat, 5-round technical battle here that we may or may not be talking about at the end of the year for a fight of the year. I think it's going to be a phenomenal fight. I think we're going to go the distance regardless of who is the winner. But again, Adesanya has looked, literally is perfect at middleweight when you look at his record, and he's almost looked perfect in those fights too. So for Bobby Knuckles now, riding this 3-fight win streak, he's rejuvenated, he's polished up as we hinted to earlier. Is it enough? That's just a question that I can't necessarily put a yes or no on, man.
Let me ask you this. Robert Whittaker this week, he admitted about the elements of the first fight getting to his head. Some of Izzy's comments kind of pissing him off. Again, is he kind of getting in his head in the first fight? And then the moment feeling a little too big. The biggest audience ever. The biggest crowd, I should say, ever for a UFC fight. He said that he wants to fight like a more mixed martial artist this time. Feels like the first fight, he kind of just went at him angry.
Yeah.
And I agree. So is there an element here, Dominic, that Whittaker is going to look to do level changes, to mix things up? Is that going to be to his benefit here if he wants to really win this fight or have a chance to? Instead of, I know you were mentioning, he does have that really good 1-2 head kick following. But against Adesanya, I don't know if that's a battle he really wants to get into. So will takedowns come into play, and will maybe even like clinching and just always trying to make Izzy second guess like where Whittaker's going to go? Is that going to be kind of the element for him here to try to win?
Yeah, I'd actually love to see how the clinch would go between these two, especially with that size discrepancy. But yes, I do think takedowns, I think grappling is going to be a part of Whittaker's game plan. I think we're going to even see him land some takedowns in this fight. But Adesanya looked so much improved in that second Vettori fight, man. His takedown defense looked great, but when he did go down, like you said, flipping positions, he had Marvin Vettori in a submission. I was like,
Marvin
what the
Vettori
hell?
Is a big dude too, and
Yes.
he made that look easy.
Yeah, so it just makes you wonder. Israel obviously going to be the bigger man in this one. What can he do? I wouldn't even be surprised if maybe Adesanya does a little sneaky trip or something in there. But yes, if Whittaker wants to win this fight, not only is he going to have to obviously land strikes on the feet, but grappling and wrestling is going to have to at least be implemented. The level changes. Regardless if he even lands a takedown, you're going to have to present the threat there to at least put it in Adesanya's head.
Let's move on to the co-main event, Dominic, because this one is this one's interesting.
This came out of nowhere, huh?
And you know what? I like that I've been seeing this fight just as much as the main event, as far as on
they deserve
ESPN, really everywhere. Like these two guys, Derrick Lewis and Tai Tuivasa, are kind of being treated like stars. And you know what? Respect UFC
Yes.
and ESPN and everybody else who's making that happen, because this fight is, I mean,
it's a fan favorite, huh?
look, it's gonna be sloppy. It's gonna be two guys throwing as hard as they can at one another, and someone's gonna go down. I think that's what we all imagine. Who knows? I mean, Derrick Lewis being in the fight is enough to make you go, well, there was that one time with the Ngannou back in the day. But again, we won't focus on that. So, Dominic, a big jump here for Tuivasa, because he just got into the top 15, win over Augusto Sakai.
Looked great.
Was that his last? That was his last.
That was his last fight. Knocked him out.
Yeah. And he looked great. Augusto Sakai, top 15 heavyweight. But the jump from Augusto Sakai to Derrick Lewis is pretty steep.
Yes.
And I know. I get it. At heavyweight, it's so weird because like these two, one punch just can end it.
You're done.
They're that big. They're that powerful. So really, it doesn't matter what their ranking is. But Tuivasa, to his credit, has had a resurgence like you rarely see. A guy who was rumored to be cut summer of 2020, kind of maybe was even, I mean, it maybe was like one of those things where they cut him, but the paperwork got lost in the mail. So then they're like, well, we need a guy to fight Harry Hunsucker. So here you go.
Yeah.
But he was 3-3, won his first 3 fights, lost his next 3, and he was on the chopping block.
Yep.
Then he came out, knocked out Stefan Struve, knocked out Harry Hunsucker, and then once he knocked out Greg Hardy, it was like, okay, this guy's like
he's back. Yeah.
And then Augusto Sakai after that. So 4 in a row now. Makes him 7-3 in the UFC, but he's going up against the Black Beast, Derrick Lewis, who has basically taken the style that Tuivasa's been doing to win these fights better than anybody has. I mean, he's got the most knockouts in heavyweight history in the UFC. And he is kind of the fresh guy here, coming off of a win just, over a month ago against Chris Daukaus.
And he looked phenomenal in that fight, by the way, too.
So clearly Lewis still motivated. This card is in, isn't it in Houston?
It's in Houston, yes.
Which is Derrick Lewis's hometown, I believe he's a Houston guy. Obviously, the main event of UFC 265, where Lewis was fighting for an interim belt, was in Houston, and he got kind of embarrassed by Ciryl Gane. A lot of motivation here for Derrick Lewis. 100%. So Dominic, it feels like a bit of an uphill battle for Tai Tuivasa, but is he capable of getting it done?
This fight's crazy, man. It really is. It's such a random but badass, matchup, and it is two guys. It's going to be striking, right? I can't help but just bring this up that for the nosebleeds, I saw that plus 380 to go the distance, and I almost wanted to sprinkle a little something on there, but the power just came too much into play for me here from both guys. It's crazy though, because Derrick Lewis, I mean, obviously he got TKO'd by Ciryl Gane, but we don't really see him get stopped all too often for the most part.
He did get stopped by like JDS, I remember. Yeah. But really, that was probably the last time before this. Daniel Cormier submitted him.
Yeah, he did submit him there. And for Tai, kind of the same. He has 2 decision losses, and he did get TKO'd once. But it's just Tai is going to be the guy that kind of just or at least can be the bull rusher in this. Derrick Lewis never really does that. He he sits, he waits, he
plods,
and it's one shot, and that's what he did to Chris Daukaus. That was so perfect. So Ty's got to be careful. And you always say this, so to your credit here, Tai Tuivasa has some slept-on leg kicks, man. He's got big, powerful, thick legs. Those could come into play here. I mean, you don't see Derrick Lewis get leg kicked too often. And in a 3-round fight in a heavyweight division, that can play dividends. So, I'm more curious to see what Tai Tuivasa brings to the table, because we've been there and done that with Derrick Lewis. Obviously, he's taking a risk here because he's fighting the number 11 guy. Yes, it's a big name, but at the end of the day, if you're wanting to stay in contender talks, you have to win this fight. So he can't lose. So it is kind of a must-win for Derrick. But for Tai, I'm really curious to see how he can show up here, in a co-main event slot under the bright lights in Derrick Lewis's hometown. And if he wins this fight, man, the Shoey is in title contender status, my friend. He also said he'd even be willing to take a Shoey out of Derrick Lewis's cup.
I'm just going to avoid that one because that's crazy. But yes, I'm glad you brought up the leg kicks because I would go so far to say I think Tai Tuivasa has a more complete striking arsenal than Derrick Lewis.
Yeah.
But Derrick Lewis's biggest weapon isn't just the power in his hands, it's the timing.
Yes.
Timing is such a factor for him. That's why when you see it, yes, I get it. He's kind of gotten that reputation, part of it being that he's kind of doubled down on it as being just this guy who has power but doesn't really know what he's doing or something. Has no technique.
Yeah, that ain't.
It's not really the case. I mean,
see what he did to Curtis Blades, people.
It's. I'm not saying that he's Peter Yan or Corey Sandhagen, but he is a very powerful heavyweight who has amazing timing and has a great knack for getting to finish. Obviously, because of that. When Curtis Blades was winning that fight early and he went for the shot, Lewis was so smart and quick to throw that uppercut in there with just the force of a guy who saw it coming a mile away.
Yeah.
That's going to be the problem for Tai Tuivasa, who does like to kind of speed things up, does like to get in your face early. But he is kind of the younger guy, the less experienced guy here, so he doesn't quite have that timing that Derrick Lewis has, at least not up to this point.
Mm-hmm.
So, and both guys, again, Derrick Lewis, yes, he has been finished, but it's hard to imagine either of these guys getting one punch KO'd.
I know. It's weird.
But then, I'm not really sure how else this fight ends, to be honest. I guess a TKO would be the assumption. With the amount of power these guys are throwing, this is can't miss.
Oh, that's to say the least.
Let's talk about the feature bout.
We love some feature bouts.
3 headlines for this card. Jared Cannonier versus Derrick Brunson. Number 3 versus number 4.
This is big.
Look, I know I talked a lot about Sean Strickland last week and potentially, was his win enough to maybe put him in some sort of position for a title shot, depending on who wins the title fight here. But it seems by most sources, most people believe this right here is the number 1 contender fight. The winner of this, the reason why this is put on this card, to line up with the winner of the title fight, will be the next title fight, I guess, unless Whittaker wins, and then they'll probably do a trilogy with Izzy. But let's just say it looks like the winner of this fight will be in the driver's seat for a title shot.
Yes.
So a lot on the line, a lot, obviously, of motivation for both these guys. But an interesting wrinkle thrown in today, Dominic. I'm going to mention it right now. Derrick Brunson saying that he only has 2 fights left after this one, no matter if he wins the title, if he...
Yeah.
Basically saying, I'm fighting 2 more times. That's it. So quit asking.
Right.
So does that change anything about how you view this fight? Because it really threw me for a loop when I heard it.
This fight specifically, no. But a lot of people were responding saying, "Oh no, he just shot himself in the foot. He admitted he wants to retire soon. Dana ain't gonna give him a title shot if he wins." Meh. I don't necessarily agree with that. But the fight itself, I don't think it plays much of a factor. I think Derrick Brunson looks phenomenal. And it's just that momentum for me that he's riding right now is saying a lot. He's hungry. I think he really wants to get that title fight back, especially if he can fight Izzy again. I think he truthfully wants to try and settle the score with him. I'm not saying it's an easy fight for him, but I see that motivation and that hunger from him. So if he wins this one, say he gets 1 title fight, say he wins the title, then he can defend once. I don't play too much into the kind of that narrative that people are throwing around. Do you?
I think I put a little more on it, only because, but I don't know if it's good or bad.
Yeah.
Because I think it could go either way. You take those comments and you could go, well, he is going to be the most motivated to get it done.
Yeah.
Because it's now or never. If you're, yes, yeah. He's already, 37?
Yeah, he's 38, actually.
Yeah, we kind of knew, there was a part of us that kind of knew it's not like he has a ton of time left, but for him to be just already saying it, putting it out there, being very confident that like I'm done at this point,
Yeah.
tells me that could add a lot of confidence or a lot of motivation for someone to get it done now.
Mm-hmm.
Like win emphatically here, title fight next, the dream that you've been trying to chase for so long.
Yep.
But then there's the other side where I will admit he seemed very content with really what he's accomplished at this point.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of said like, look, I want to be able to spend time with my family, be in good health for my family. So I'm not going to fight anymore to risk, my quality of life.
Yeah.
So it almost could come off like a man with one foot out the door.
True.
But again, maybe I'm reaching a bit, but it was something that was unexpected to come from fight week. And
Yes, it's worth mentioning.
I felt like it was worth mentioning. Now, I already feel like this fight's kind of close. If you watched the nosebleeds, I did put Jared Cannonier on kind of my favorites parlay, like the picks guys that are pretty decent favorites that I wanted to stack on one another to try to get some plus money. So I feel pretty confident in Cannonier, but that's without the noise. It's more so just because if you go by the matchup itself, Derrick Brunson's a great wrestler, probably the best wrestler, especially like in the top 10 of this division.
Yeah.
One of the only guys that...
Him and Vittori's it.
Oh, yeah, him and Vittori. It's, really one of those two. And they're the only two guys that really have like a clear focus on it, which I think has been kind of to his benefit on this run. I mean, he's been kind of he's been the kryptonite for some of these guys like Darren Till, Edmund Shabazian. But Jared Cannonier is a guy who's fought at heavyweight, who's fought at light heavyweight, a big man here at the middleweight division. So he's got that strength. That even when you cut down, that strength kind of stays a little bit. You're a guy who's used to fighting bigger people, taking punishment from bigger people, trying to be moved around by bigger people. Mm-hmm. So for Cannonier, I don't think the power of Brunson in his takedowns, the strength of Brunson in his takedowns is going to be much of a problem for him. But that's not the only way he can end up on the ground. But I'm just saying that if I had to go in what I'm confident in, I like Cannonier's power. I don't necessarily like Brunson's ability to get this fight to the ground due to the Cannonier's strength advantage. And I like Cannonier's ability to stay on the outside. He's fast on his feet. And, I think he does get a finish. I do. And Izzy, if he wins, I think you clearly set up that matchup next. And we'll talk about this depending on what happens, I guess, more on Monday. But Izzy's wanted to fight this guy.
He has.
He came up short against Whittaker. So, again, he's 37. He doesn't have a lot of time left. Where's his motivation? Because here, this is kind of a now or never.
Yes.
He was right here in the driver's seat. Win, you get a title shot a year and a half ago or a year ago, whatever it was now. Here he is again. You somehow made your way back. Now it's time to capitalize.
Yeah, I mean, it's a winner go home for both guys for sure, undoubtedly. And it's such a, you mentioned that strength of Cannonier and the 3 weight classes, wins in all 3 weight classes too. One of like 2 or 3 fighters that have ever done that. I'll be curious to see how these two really do stack up. I want to see them face to face at the weigh-ins and then in that octagon on Saturday night. I think it's going to be interesting to see how the styles clash as well. Of course, as you said, Cannonier has that power, and I can't help but note that Brunson has shown vulnerability constantly when it's on the feet. Even in some of these wins that he's tallied with 5 in a row, Darren Till's caught him. He's been caught against a couple of these guys. Kevin Holland caught him on the feet. But if he gets it to the ground, these dudes don't get up, man. He's very strong down there on that ground. But, if it stays standing, if Cannonier can keep it on the feet, I can't help but to agree with you and lean toward Cannonier in this one. If, I'm not saying Brunson can't win a decision or even get a finish because he has plenty of finishes on his record, but it's a very tough night out if he doesn't get this fight on the ground.
Mm-hmm. Let's get on into the rest because there's a lot more fights to talk about. Let's start with Bobby Green versus Nasrat Haqparast to open our main card. 2 guys at lightweight really pushing for some top 15. Bobby Green coming off one of the best wins of his career,
Yeah.
quick TKO of Ally Quina. Hawk Perez coming off a pretty disappointing showing against Dan Hooker. So, Dominic, I mean, this feels like kind of a toss-up if I'm being honest, because Hawk Perez is the younger, maybe higher ceiling fighter, but a guy who's also coming up on a couple disappointing performances, while Bobby Green, the aging veteran, the guy who looked like his best years were behind him, really ever since COVID and the Apex has kind of came around. He's put some more life into his career, really re-energized it. And yeah, he did have like kind of a loss there with Thiago Moises, but his bounce back, the Ally Quina win was emphatic on a big stage. And I will say his loss to Fiziev, I think he kind of came out as a winner in that one because he took Fiziev to the brink. So, that being said, do you view this fight pretty much 50-50 based on those elements, or is one of those that I mentioned kind of pushing you in a direction? Do you like kind of really what you're seeing from Bobby Green in the cage, or do you kind of like the potential for Nasrat to really step up and maybe show why he was once viewed as a highly touted prospect?
Yeah, this fight at first I was going to have on the nosebleeds, Noah, because I saw it, has Hawk Perez as a plus 120, and I'm like, oh, wow. I'm not necessarily surprised he's an underdog, but I thought it'd be closer to even money, honestly. It feels like an even fight to me. So I'm like, oh, I'm going to go money line on Nasrat here. I think he can bounce back. But then I sat on it, and I'm like, you know what, man? Bobby Green's won 4 of his last 6. He's had such a great career resurgence, even against some of these younger guys, including Rafael Fiziev. And to do what he did to Ally Quina, no one really does that to Al. Knock him out cold. I mean, that was brutal. And at 35 years old, he's super experienced, Bobby Green. He's been in there with you name it. I mean, Dustin Poirier, the list goes on and on with who he's fought, win or lose. So this is still a big jump for Nasrat in a sense. I mean, yes, it's not Dan Hooker, but when you're talking experience, you don't get much more than Bobby Green here. So, yes, I view it as a very much a 50-50 fight. It's a big fight for Nasrat to not only bounce back but to keep his name around there. And Bobby Green, he's been right there around top 15 for years, it feels like at this point. Can he just make one more push into getting a number next to his name? I think, by all means, either man can come out on top on this one.
Yeah, true. Prelims. Andrei Arlovsky, the former
Your
UFC
baby
heavyweight champion. My baby.
Well, the fight, like this fight's your baby.
Oh,
sorry,
okay.
Not Andre. It's no.
I think I'm his baby, actually.
right.
Me baby.
Yes.
But he is going up against Jared Vandura, Dominic. This is just like a typical Arlovsky matchup.
It is, isn't it?
Literally, the UFC, to their credit, have kept him around, and he's sort of made that worth their while. Yes, Arlovsky is due for one of those, get knocked out in 52nd type performances against a really highly touted heavyweight prospect. But in between those, those losses to Ngannou, to Rosenstruik, to guys like that, he's had these fights against, again, guys with a lot less experience, more green a lot of times, young studs, I'll just call them. And he uses a high fight IQ and the fact that he's a well-rounded fighter who's been doing it for a long time to kind of win a lot of easy decisions for him. Mm-hmm. And here he is again with another guy, Vandura, who's not really had a great UFC run, 1 and 2. Also a guy who's not necessarily finishing fights at a high rate. So to me, this fight feels like destiny for Arlovsky to get another decision win. Am I wrong?
No, it does feel that way, man. And again, I mentioned it on Nosebleeds. I got to bring it up here. No, if he wins this fight, tally at 3 in a row for the 43-year-old. I mean, come on.
And how many wins will that put in the UFC?
That
be like
if he wins,
second?
Yeah, if he wins, that will be his 22nd UFC win.
Will he be like tied third or tied second?
Oh, he's got to be up there right behind, Jim Miller, Donald Cerrone, all those fellas.
Yeah. I mean,
crazy. And to do it at 43 years old, because again, we've seen him not necessarily evolve into this like amazing heavyweight, but he's evolved from what he used to be to keep up with the times and with these newer guys that are coming into the division, and that's why he keeps winning when it matters most. It's crazy.
Yeah, if he were to win this, I mean, I feel like I'm going to say it every time he fights, but this guy was a champion in 2005.
Yeah.
known for the one-punch power, in his fist and the speed that he threw at. Loses the belt, had a couple tough losses, leaves the UFC, goes on a bad losing streak. Everybody thinks his career's done at the age of 34, 35. Somehow makes his way back to the UFC. People, I remember when I was watching those old MMA podcasts, and
Oh yeah, yeah.
it was called the MMA Beat, and like Ariel Helwani and Luke Thomas were on back in the mid 2000s, mid 2010s, I should say. Like one of the first episodes was Andrei Arlovsky being re-signed, and people were like, why are they signing him back?
Right.
And you know what? It hasn't been perfect. He had that like 5 straight losses.
Yeah.
But he, I think, has made it work somehow. He keeps adapting. There's just performances where you see something new from him. When he fought Stefan Struve a couple years ago, I think he got like 6 takedowns, and he had like 5 in his career.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember that fight just being like, what is this guy, man? Like, I have so much respect for what he's been able to accomplish and is still doing. And like you said, a win, 3 in a row, a heavyweight, all 3 against guys that really, are better athletes at this
Younger,
point.
faster, stronger.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's impressive.
Oh, to say the least.
Now here's one. Now here's Dominic's baby. Not her, the fight.
True.
Roxanne Modafferi in her retirement fight going up against the young beast of a prospect.
That's right.
Casey O'Neill. 3-0, 3 finishes, now ranked in the top 15. But Dominic, does it feel like a fight of destiny for one Roxanne? You've been a little nervous about this one.
I am nervous, man. You can never count out the Happy Warrior, the most experienced female mixed martial arts fighter ever. I mean,
50th fight coming up.
Yeah, it's just crazy, man. And she's had this back and forth, running the mill in the UFC, but she's always in the fight. That's why you have to respect Roxanne Modafferi. She's such a warrior, truthfully. And this isn't an easy fight for Casey O'Neill, man. I can't help but wonder, and I've seen it get thrown around so much, it's a lot like 3 years ago when Macy Barber went up against Roxanne Modafferi. Macy was in the same spot, 3-0 in the UFC, 3 finishes, just like Casey. Comes in, yes, she tore her ACL. I understand that. But Roxy was dominating that fight before, and she very much dominated it after the fact regardless. So for that reason alone, you can't count out Roxanne. But Casey O'Neill, 24 years old, she's undefeated as a whole. She's looked unstoppable in the UFC. Even through adversity, we've seen her kind of bounce back and then get a late finish in the second and third rounds. And she's been in there with good competition, so the number 15 is much deserved. But this is by far her biggest test, by far her biggest challenge. And man, she is just so confident. She thinks she's going to stop Roxanne. She thinks she's going to make a statement. And I'm not saying she can't, but I'm just saying, Casey, it's not going to come easy. And if it does, holy shit, we've got a prospect on our hands. I mean, I know we've already labeled her that, but if she can finish Roxanne and make a statement, that's saying a lot, I think, for her future in this division.
This will be her 9th fight in her MMA career. This is going to be Roxanne's 50th.
Yeah, and experience matters, folks.
Experience does matter, but again, Roxanne is just one of those fighters. I think she hasn't been the favorite in a fight in it's been like 4 or 5 years or something like that.
That wouldn't surprise me.
Constantly counted out. Always finds a way to surprise you, whether it's winning the fight, Macy Barber, or just hanging in there. Showing a lot of
she's
heart,
always going to do that.
A lot of toughness. Yes. She's deceptively tough, obviously. She's got kind of the nerdy thing going on. So a lot of people want to kind of put her in some boxes, like as if she's not like a real fighter or something. But the girl's good. She's an OG.
Yes.
I just think Casey O'Neill is a beast. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that's going to automatically mean Casey's going to win, but I like the head on Casey's shoulders.
Yes.
She seems someone who recognizes the challenge, is not overlooking Roxanne, sees the moment. She wants to take this moment. It's obviously going to be a little bit elevated because it's Roxanne's retirement fight. Mm-hmm. She wants to take this for herself and be like, look, Roxanne can have her moment to retire, but ultimately you guys need to pay attention to me. I'm the problem now at women's
the future,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The future. Funny. Macy Barber, hope to see you back soon.
Yeah.
Moving on, two top 10 men's flyweights go head-to-head as Alex Perez in the first fight he's been in since he lost to Davison Figueiredo for the title
Yeah.
goes up against Matt Schnell,
Maybe.
everybody's favorite side character from Disney's Cars.
If you don't know, you need to go back to the catalog.
If you Google Max Schnell, maybe you can piece it together. But it's
Maybe.
So Dominic, two top 10 flyweights here. You seem to be very surprised by how heavy of a favorite Alex Perez is. Tell the audience why that is.
Yeah, this is crazy. I mean, what do we got? It's already passed, but
it's almost a 4-1.
Almost a 4-1 for Alex Perez, and I know he's great. He's 6-2 in the UFC. He's a Contender Series guy. He was the first ever Contender Series alum to get a title fight. But I mean, he got handled by Davison, and at that time, Davison was doing it to everyone, so it's okay. But we haven't seen him in a long time. That's quite the long layoff. He didn't get to fight at all in 2021. We did get to see Matt Schnell. He is coming off of a loss. But, just the odds that are on this fight really just take me by surprise. I think Matt Schnell, for being such an incredible technical boxer, the guy has 8 submission wins in his career and 2 knockouts. So he is good everywhere, and so is Alex Perez. And that's why I think this fight is so well evenly matched. Matt Schnell is going to be the bigger guy. There's the odds going there, minus 380 to plus 290. But Schnell's the bigger guy. I think this is very much a toss-up, being that we haven't seen Perez in so long. He's trying to bounce back from a very tough loss. Don't count out Matt Schnell in this one. I actually think it's going to be a pretty exciting fight. It should be back and forth, a lot of action. Both guys aren't used to boring fights, and it's not going to be any different here.
Both guys should be very prepared for one another. They've literally had this matchup canceled like 5 or 6 times.
Yeah, this fight single-handedly has made the most appearances on the podcast, I'm sure.
It's not as big as this fight, but I mean, it's literally a Habib-Tony type fight. But we're actually going to get to see it at the end.
I hope so.
Yeah, well, that's true. I should knock on wood there. But because of that, I think you're going to get the best of each of these guys. Hopefully none of these dropouts have been from no lingering injuries or COVID issues or whatever it could be. But I feel like you're going to get the best of both these guys. They should be very prepared for one another. Alex Perez, deadly leg kicks. Matt Schnell, a bit of a wrestler. And, that doesn't really, I don't think I did a very good job selling you on they're both pretty well rounded, I would say. But
yeah,
I think I am surprised by the odds because yes, Alex Perez fought for a title, but he was like a late replacement. Cody Garbrandt had fallen out, and most people I think felt like it was just too soon for Perez. He's good, but outside of and really the win, his biggest win is looking even better and better because it was against the guy who was supposed to fight.
He beat Pantoja.
Yes, and chopped him down with leg kicks.
I think he stopped him with leg kicks, or he stopped someone.
It was a leg kick that ended the fight. I mean, literally, Dominic, it was like taking an axe to a tree to take it down.
Yeah.
I mean, that was what it was, and that's very impressive. You don't see a lot of that, so I think he's really good, has a lot of potential. But Matt Schnell's been kind of that dude that's right here. I'm not sure if he's ever really going to go above this kind of spot, this back half of the top 10, but he's definitely deserving of being in this spot.
Yeah, I mean, this could show us right here. If you beat this number 4 guy, you come out here and prove it. It's an interesting fight.
And one of the openers here, AJ Dobson, Jacob Malkoun. It's the pick and fight of the week on the nosebleeds. It's the closest odds right now. But Dominic, AJ Dobson, OHIO, this guy.
That's right.
This guy, I like his potential a lot, but it's a tough first matchup, but one that I think I really like it because both these guys just come in and both have shown potential, but there's just so much unknown about them. Combined 11 fights, I think, in their 2 MMA careers. AJ Dobson, or maybe it's I guess
they both had
12.
They've both had 6 fights. Yep.
Yeah, so 12 combined in their MMA careers. AJ Dobson has finished every fight. His last fight on the Contender Series was the only one that got out of the first round, and he won via submission, which is not exactly, he has won by submission before, but I mean, the knockouts have been really his thing regionally, and doing it so quickly. Jacob Malkoun tells a different story because he's fought in the UFC twice, and it's been a very black and white start for him. debut. Again, he is a training partner of Robert Whittaker. That's saying something. He makes his debut, though, at UFC 254 against Phil Hawes, another good prospect. And Phil Hawes beasted him. Feasted him. 16 seconds, knocked him loopy.
Yes.
But then he follows it up against another guy with, again, dynamite in his hands, Abdul Razak Al Hassan. And he handled him. I mean, I think it was like a 30-25, 30-26 scorecards. Like, used grappling and dominated him.
Mm-hmm.
So here, Dobson does have good grappling, but I have a hard time seeing Malkoun taking this fight down. I think Dobson's the more well-rounded fighter right now. He just needs a chance to show it. And that's why UFC debut, you're getting a guy who's got experience in the UFC. It's a close fight, but I do think overall Dobson's going to come in here and put up the kind of performance that might put him on our list for newcomer of the year. Who knows?
Yeah, we've seen a lot of big debuts this year, and we could be in store for one more on Saturday. I can't say much more in terms of the X's and O's, but I really do love this fight and everything about it.
Mm-hmm. That's going to wrap it up for the weekend preview of UFC 271, essentially. Let us know your thoughts, your predictions. What stories are you most interested in for UFC 271? We'll tell you how to do so here momentarily because we'll be back on Monday with the weekend recap. It'll be 2-episode week, so Monday, Friday, and the nosebleeds on Thursday.
Yes.
Y'all know the drill. But until then, Dominic, tell the good people where they can find you on social media.
Find me on Twitter, on Instagram, at DSlee14. More importantly, go follow, go engage, go interact with the podcast on Twitter, on Instagram, at BAJ_MMA podcast.
As for me, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, at ntbaker_. If you go to the link in my bio, there's a link tree. It presents you a list of links to all the platforms the podcast's on, along with social media platforms. So that includes the Twitter, the Instagram, the YouTube channel, and Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcast. It's all on there. What was that?
I flicked the little slinky thing on the boom arm. We're fine.
Also, there's 2 links on there for today's sponsor, Anchor.
Shout out.
Anchor. First one, leaving a voice message. Again, that's how you can do it. 60 seconds, your thoughts, your predictions. Once the fights take place, leave your reactions to what happens. We'll feature it on Monday's show. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Be a part of the conversation. That's the way to do it. Also, there's a link on there if you want to become a supporter of the podcast. We appreciate any and all support. But Dominic, that's it. We're out. And we'll see y'all on Monday.